Hey guys, tonight we drift through the pale clouds over Mount Olympus, where marble steps glint like cold milk under moonlight, and the air hums with the sound of drowsy thunder. You find yourself climbing those endless stairs, sandals whispering, until you realize the rumbling above isn't the weather, it's Zeus clearing his throat. You probably won't survive this if you interrupt him mid-speech. But don't worry, we'll tiptoe. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop your city and local time down below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand beneath the bright hall of Olympus, and the place smells faintly of rain on bronze. Zeus lounges on his throne like a sleepy lion in a cloud zoo, lightning idly flickering at his fingertips. The gods around him chatter in slow, musical tones. You're half expecting them to serve ambrosia latte art, but the vibe is more bureaucratic than brunch. This is the boardroom of eternity, and Zeus, equal parts CEO and cranky landlord, runs it with the same precision that makes mortals grumble when thunder ruins picnics. Historians still argue whether the ancient Greeks truly feared Zeus's punishments or merely respected his sense of cosmic order. But either way, everyone agreed. You didn't test him. As you drift closer, you notice his beard isn't so much hair as it is cloud matter rippling with tiny sparks. Every time he exhales, a storm somewhere on Earth catches a new breath. He isn't cruel, not exactly. He's a god with the exhausting job of balancing infinity's chores, justice, rain schedules, and the occasional mortal tantrum. When someone cheats death or forgets an offering, Zeus doesn't rage right away. He sighs first. That sigh is the wind before a thunderclap, the warning email before the divine write-up. And when he finally acts, his punishments land somewhere between poetic justice and a bad performance review. You remember that one co-worker who microwaved fish in the office kitchen? Now imagine Zeus handling that. A lifetime of fish smell vapor swirling around the offender forever. That's how he thinks. Symbolic, dramatic, a little too committed to the bit. Tonight you'll stroll through a handful of those eternal HR cases, and each will sound absurd until you realize it mirrors some sleepy corner of human behavior, because behind the myth's glittering drama lies a pattern you already know. Rules made to keep chaos from leaking out of the sky. You pause near a gallery of suspended thunderbolts, each tagged like museum artifacts. There's the bolt that ended a false king's parade, another that singed a healer who got too clever, and one, still faintly warm, labeled Prometheus, return policy violation. The air hums with restrained electricity. Somewhere below, mortals dream of gods, while up here, gods dream of mortals behaving. It's the kind of symmetry that could lull anyone into a philosophical nap. Even Zeus looks half asleep, eyes heavy with millennia of complaints. The mainstream historical fact sliding quietly under your eyelids, ancient Greeks actually offered small clay figurines or bronze mini-axes to Zeus as peace offerings after storms. Archaeologists have found them clustered around mountaintop shrines, evidence of centuries spent negotiating with the sky. The quirky tidbit: some villagers believed Zeus's lightning left behind thunderstones, pieces of rock that carried healing energy, essentially prehistoric meteorite merch. People collected them like crystals long before Etsy got involved. Zeus raises one eyebrow, thunder rolling softly. You sense he knows you're eavesdropping. He likes an audience, though. Every storyteller does. He gestures toward a balcony of mist where visions appear like faint holograms. One shows a man chained to a rock, another a king pushing something heavy uphill, another reaching for fruit that retreats like bad Wi-Fi. Zeus's eyes gleam. He doesn't punish for sport. He punishes for narrative impact. He's the kind of god who edits his mythic screenplay until the moral lands just right. You imagine him muttering, "Needs more symbolism," while the thundercloud interns groan. You lean on the marble rail, feeling the vibration of distant tempests. The clouds below drift like heavy cream, glowing faintly with lightning veins. If Olympus had an elevator, it would play harp elevator music, slow, twinkling, endlessly looping. And as you watch, you can almost taste how these stories, Prometheus's theft, Sisyphus's climb, Tantalus's thirst, were bedtime morality tales long before they became museum labels. They were whispered by firelight, meant to keep the world polite enough for mourning. A debate lingers like the scent of ozone. Was Zeus ever meant to represent pure justice or simply authority itself? Some scholars insist he's the moral compass of the pantheon. Others argue he's a mirror for mortal kings who punish to maintain image. You suspect the truth dozes somewhere in between, that he's a father figure so ancient he forgets whether he's teaching or merely scolding. And tonight you'll wander through both faces. You feel the temperature drop a degree, that peculiar hush before drizzle. Zeus's throne room stretches outward, its marble floor melting into cloud. He speaks, not with thunder, but with the low static buzz of sky meeting sea. Order must sleep lightly, mortal. Then his form blurs, and you're left alone in the drift, your heartbeat sinking to the slow pulse of lightning. It's less fear, more lullaby. Every crack of thunder feels like punctuation in a story too ancient to end. Somewhere a faint bell rings, perhaps the hour, perhaps the signal that the night's first myth is ready. You tuck yourself deeper into the sound, following its echo through corridors of vapor. Around you, statues of punished souls shimmer faintly, men, women, even half-gods frozen mid-struggle, as though the thunder paused time right before it could swallow them. Each one tells you, this is what happens when hubris writes its own bedtime story. You wander closer to the statue of a titan chained to a mountainside. A faint screech of wings vibrates through the marble. Your eyelids flutter. Prometheus waits, patient, sarcastic, eternal. And as you step toward his echo, you realize that every punishment Zeus designs begins not in rage, but in insomnia. He can't rest until the balance feels right, and so he sculpts eternity out of repetition. A curious way to manage peace, you think, but effective. It's why you're still listening after all. Above, thunder mumbles like an old cat dreaming. The stars fade, replaced by the slow gray of dawn. Or maybe that's just your mind dimming the lights. You breathe in ozone, exhale curiosity, and drift forward, ready to watch how a single spark can turn into a lesson that never ends. The next vision glows. Brighter now, a chained figure, an eagle, a mountain wind that never stops. Zeus sighs again, somewhere beyond the clouds. It's time for the next complaint to be addressed. The clouds part like curtains in a sleepy theater, and you stroll straight into what looks suspiciously like Olympus's customer service lobby. A golden counter stretches to infinity, stacked with papyrus scrolls labeled complaints, requests, and apologies. The sign over the desk reads, Zeus's complaint box. Please be specific. The faint scent of ozone mixes with burnt parchment. Evidently, not every petition survives review. You wander closer, trying not to step on the small winged sandals someone's left behind. Behind the counter, Hermes is half dozing, quill dangling from his hand. "You wouldn't believe the paperwork," he mumbles. "Storm refunds, thunderbolt claims, mortals asking for better harvest Wi-Fi." His voice drifts like the static before rain. You slide a finger along the marble desk, noticing that every complaint hums faintly, alive with anxiety. It's like touching the collective worry of humankind, all the oaths broken, the guests insulted, the hospitality rituals forgotten. The Greeks called that sacred duty xenia, the bond between host and guest. Violate it, and Zeus Xenios personally handled the Yelp review. A mainstream historical fact floats lazily through your thoughts. In actual Greek city-states, hospitality was more than manners. It was divine contract law. If you welcomed a stranger, Zeus himself was said to witness the meal. That meant every traveler could claim protection, like a cosmic travel insurance plan. And if someone cheated the guest or poisoned the bread, well, you know who got a lightning gram in the mail. Hermes yawns. Most of these mortals don't even realize how thin the line is between oops and eternal consequence. He flips through a pile. Ah, here's one. King of Corinth caught cheating death again. That one's going to need escalation. You glance down at the parchment. Someone's drawn a crude doodle of a man pushing a rock uphill. A sticky note beside it reads, "See also hubris." You get the sense that Zeus's punishments aren't random tantrums. They're responses, handwritten notes to mortals who ignored polite boundaries. Every thunderbolt is basically a celestial, "per my last email." He enforces order not because he's cruel, but because chaos keeps stealing his parking spot. Historians still argue whether Zeus was modeled on actual Mycenaean sky deities or evolved from an older Indo-European storm god, but they all agree his authority was rooted in reciprocity. You respect the system keeps raining. You cheat it, thunder happens. You wander deeper into the hall, where the air smells faintly of wet ink. A mural stretches across the wall, Zeus shaking hands with mortals, kings, even rival gods. Each handshake shimmers, turning into a bolt of lightning that threads between them. It's strangely bureaucratic, this god's justice. No brimstone, just contracts. You can almost hear him sigh. "Keep your promises, kids." Your sandals click softly against the marble, and a small gust of wind slips a parchment free. It lands at your feet. The heading reads, "Department of Thunderbolt Allocation." Beneath, in spidery handwriting, are categories: false prophets, betrayed guests, unauthorized fire usage, pretending to be me, don't. You imagine Zeus marking each case with a lazy flick of his wrist, thunder following like the world's loudest punctuation mark. Then, a flicker of static, Zeus himself materializes not as a king now, but as a weary clerk. His toga has ink smudges. His beard crackles faintly with residual voltage. "You," he says softly, as if you're both in on the joke. "Do you know how many mortals promise offerings and forget?" He doesn't sound angry, just tired. They ask for rain, for victory, for love. And when I deliver, they ghost me. You nod. It sounds painfully familiar. Even gods, it seems, deal with follow-up fatigue. He gestures to a smaller stack labeled "Minor Infractions." You peek. One mortal used my name to impress a date. Another, a shepherd swore on my lightning, then lied about his flock. Each note carries a faint spark, guilt turned into static electricity. Zeus taps one finger against the parchment, and you hear a distant rumble. Somewhere down on earth, Thunder rolls over a hillside, just enough to make the liar flinch. No full punishment needed, just a cosmic nudge. The quirky tidbit of the night hums quietly here. Ancient Greek temples sometimes had oath stones. People would touch them while swearing truth, believing Zeus would strike if they lied. Archaeologists have even found scorch marks near such altars, proof, perhaps, of lightning or maybe someone's nervous fire pit accident. Either way, the message was clear. Your word was never just your own. Zeus leans on the counter, studying you like a bored professor mid-office hour. Do you mortals ever stop making promises you can't keep? His tone isn't cruel. It's amused, the kind of teasing that softens the edges of eternity. You shrug. We're only human. He sighs again, eyes flicking toward the long scroll of complaints still unprocessed. Exactly. A roll of thunder punctuates the silence. You realize you've been standing amid millennia of moral paperwork, each complaint a story, each story a lesson, disguised as a bedtime caution. Some are small, like broken oaths, others monumental. You feel the weight of one scroll glowing faintly against your palm, the ink alive. It reads simply, Prometheus, unauthorized fire transfer. You glance up, and Zeus's eyes narrow with both pride and irritation. Ah, he murmurs, the employee who brought light without permission. He gestures for you to follow. We'll handle that one next. The marble floor ripples into mist, transforming into the jagged edge of a mountain. You can already hear the wind whistling, the cry of an eagle cutting through cloud. Zeus's voice trails behind you, softer now. Every gift stolen from the gods carries interest, and I always collect. Before the scene fades, you spot a tiny wooden box tucked under the counter. It reads, Suggestions. Out of curiosity, you peek inside. One note says, Fewer eagles, more forgiveness. Another, Can we get a nap day? You smile. Even immortals, it seems, crave an HR reform. You turn back one last time. The complaint hall is shrinking behind you, dissolving into cloudlight. The storm murmurs like a lullaby, steady and rhythmic. Somewhere in that rumble is the hint of thunderous laughter, the sound of a sky that knows exactly how human promises end, half kept, half forgotten, all filed under pending review. And so you step forward into the sharp air of the next scene, where justice wears feathers and eternity tastes faintly of copper and wind. Zeus's punishment department just opened a new case file, and you're about to witness how the first flame becomes a forever echo. You emerge into the thin chill of mountain air, the clouds pulling apart to reveal crags black as half-burnt toast. The light here feels brittle, morning perpetually on pause. Below you sprawls the endless slope of the Caucasus, a geography of teeth and stone. The wind carries a faint metallic taste, lightning residue, and somewhere far off, something cries, sharp and rhythmic. You know that sound. It's the wing beat of a punishment in progress. Prometheus is easy to spot. He's the one chained to the cliff like a weather vane no one asks for. Bronze shackles gleam against rock, his body stretched awkwardly but still defiant, as if he refuses to sag for Zeus's satisfaction. You creep closer, hearing the clank of his restraint sink with the slow heartbeat of thunder above. He turns his head slightly. You're early, he says, voice hoarse but steady. His eyes are the color of sparks smothered under ash. You sense that he's been expecting visitors for, a few thousand years. Prometheus, whose name literally means forethought, looks at you with the kind of patience that could bore a mountain into submission. A shadow crosses the sun, and the eagle swoops down. massive, gold-eyed feathers like serrated metal. You wince. The god's bird lands with all the grace of divine bureaucracy. "Breakfast time again," Prometheus mutters. The eagle lets out a cry that sounds suspiciously like clocking in. It isn't gore that fills the scene, just repetition. The bird feeds. The wound closes, the cycle resumes. It's the cruelest kind of balance, one that never quite resolves. As the wind gusts around you, you realize this punishment isn't just cruelty, it's accounting. Zeus's cosmic ledger demanded repayment for stolen flame, and Prometheus's eternity is the interest rate. Historians still argue whether the myth sprang from early fire control rituals or was an allegory for technology and rebellion. Either way, you feel the hum of something modern in it, the warning about invention without permission, innovation that outruns authority. Prometheus watches the eagle take flight again. "He's punctual," he says wryly. "Zeus likes routine." You can't help a faint smile. "You did steal from his pantry," you remind him. "Pantry?" he scoffs. "I gave humanity fire, warmth, craft, hope. Zeus preferred them shivering and obedient." He pauses. "Tell me, how are they doing with it now?" You hesitate, thinking of light bulbs, engines, wildfires, factory smoke, and maybe the phone glowing beside your bed. "Mixed results," you admit. His laughter rattles his chains like bells in wind. "Figures," he says. You notice how the rock beneath him is smooth, where his struggles wore it down. Even the mountain has adapted to his presence, forming a cradle of endurance. You lean against the stone, feeling its faint warmth. It's not just sunlight, it's the stored heat of every flame Prometheus gifted mankind. The world never forgot that theft. The mainstream historical fact drifts into focus. In early Greek rituals, fire for temples was considered sacred property. Each new colony carried a spark from the mother city's hearth, a literal Promethean act, the continuity of civilization through flame. Losing that fire was shameful. Relighting it from another polis meant accepting dependence. You realize Prometheus's story wasn't just myth, it was infrastructure policy dressed as theology. Then the quirky tidbit, ancient playwrights joked that if Prometheus were ever freed, he'd probably sue Zeus for unpaid overtime. One fragment of a lost comedy even imagines him teaching humans to cook Zeus's own cattle in revenge. You picture that, the Titan hosting a celestial barbecue, apron reading, "Still chained, still chefing." Prometheus's voice softens. "Do you know why the punishment fits?" he asks. "The liver, the seat of human will, of emotion. Zeus wanted the wound where courage lives." You nod slowly, half drowsy in the wind. The eagle's distant cry echoes like a metronome for eternity. "Historians still argue," you murmur, "whether your rebellion was noble or just ego dressed in fire." He chuckles. "Historians love tidy boxes. I gave them candles and they call it hubris." For a moment, the mountain stills. Clouds drift past, brushing against you like cool fabric. You imagine this cliff at night. Only moonlight, wind, and the steady beat of immortality against inevitability. Somewhere below, mortals kindle hearths, whispering prayers to a god who suffered so they could see. Then you catch another sound, a hammer's ring, faint but distinct. You glance down the slope, and through the haze see Hephaestus's forge, glowing orange deep in a valley. Legend says he forged Prometheus's chains himself, working under Zeus's order. Yet he pitied the Titan, crafting shackles smooth enough not to flay. Mercy hidden inside obedience. Olympus loves contradictions. Prometheus notices your gaze. Hephaestus visits sometimes, he says, brings gossip, tells me when mortals invent something clever. His tone brightens. Last I heard they've built flying machines. He grins weakly. Good, let them soar. Just don't let Zeus catch them doing it without a permit. You laugh quietly, the sound snatched by the wind. The air here buzzes with suspended thunder, but it's oddly calming, the rhythm of consequence rendered predictable. Prometheus's eternity, you realize, is the world's first clock, an unending cycle reminding gods and humans alike that every spark costs something. The mountain hums beneath your feet, somewhere, perhaps out of habit. Zeus glances up from his paperwork and checks the schedule. Prometheus, yes, still punished. Good. It's bureaucracy in divine form. You feel a flicker of sympathy for both sides, one guarding order, the other testing it. You wonder drowsily if justice ever feels lonely at the top. The wind picks up again, pulling mist through your hair. You close your eyes and the chains clinking becomes a lullaby. You see how this myth isn't just about pain, it's about persistence, curiosity, that restless human itch to reach beyond safety. Prometheus hums softly, a tune older than Olympus itself. You'll move on soon, he says. They always do. Zeus sends you tourists like postcards. Visit my consequences. He smirks. Next stop's the king with the rock, right? You nod, feeling the story tug at you like gravity itself. He's still rolling, Prometheus murmurs. Tell him I said he's doing great. You smile, stepping back into the fog. The chains rattle once, almost like applause. The eagle circles overhead, wings slicing through sunlight that never warms. As you drift downward, the cliff dissolves into rolling stone, endless motion. You sense the next lesson waiting, about persistence without progress, ambition turned treadmill. Somewhere behind you, Prometheus whispers, remember, fire always finds another match. You descend, carried by wind that smells faintly of smoke and irony, ready to meet a man whose punishment defines futility, whose sweat polishes stone into legend. The thunder fades, replaced by the slow, dull scrape of a boulder starting its climb. The mist thickens into rolling fog, and you realize the sound beneath your feet isn't thunder anymore. It's stone scraping on stone. A shape materializes ahead, half man, half metaphor, and entirely exhausted. You recognize him instantly. Sisyphus, king of Corinth, history's most overqualified rock pusher. He's barefoot, bronzed, and breathing like the mountain owes him rent. The boulder before him glistens with sweat and despair, perfectly round, the universe's least ergonomic punishment. Every time he gets it near the top, gravity, Zeus's favorite intern, sends it politely tumbling back. You arrive just in time to watch one of those elegant resets. The rock rolls past with the sulky grace of a bowling ball, and Sisyphus just sighs. Morning again, you ask? Or maybe evening, he replies, wiping his forehead with a sarcasm so dry it could start a wildfire. Time's slippery when your calendar has no weekends. You follow him as he trudges down the slope. The mountain here feels alive, its ridges worn into gleaming grooves by endless repetition. Every rock face glows faintly, like a used-up thunderbolt. There's no sun, just pale, steady light, eternal overtime under fluorescent eternity. Sisyphus leans into the boulder again, pushing with his whole weight. Muscles bunch, sinews strain, and you hear the low groan of inevitability. You'd think after a few centuries I'd get faster, he mutters, but Zeus likes his consistency. The mainstream historical fact slips quietly in as you watch. In ancient Corinth, Sisyphus's real-world city, archaeologists have uncovered elaborate waterworks, tunnels, wells, even underground channels. Some scholars think that image of endless labor might have stemmed from those early feats of engineering, an entire civilization rolling metaphorical stones uphill just to keep the city alive. Historians still argue, you say aloud, whether your story was meant as moral punishment or philosophical metaphor. Sisyphus smirks. I vote performance art. He braces his shoulder and starts pushing again. You decide to walk beside him. It's not like there's traffic. Why'd you do it? You ask. I mean, what did Zeus write in your HR file? He chuckles. Tricked death. Twice. You blink. Twice? He nods. First time, I chained Thanatos so nobody could die. Zeus hated that. Too many people, not enough funerals. Second time, I convinced Persephone to let me go back up. Said I needed to scold my wife for not burying me properly. Spoiler, I didn't come back. Zeus hates loopholes. He grunts as the rock shifts an inch. Now I'm in a loop of my own. A small gust of wind slips past, carrying the faint smell of iron and patience. You wonder if this is worse than Prometheus's eagle. At least the Titan gets downtime between shifts. Sisyphus just resets his task, forever on the clock. The quirky tidbit? Some later poets joke that Sisyphus whistled while he worked, not out of optimism, but out of pure spite, his own quiet rebellion. You imagine him humming a tune, maybe the same one Prometheus sang from his cliff, a little defiance in 4/4 time. As he climbs, you spot carvings in the slope, names, tally marks, crude doodles of Zeus with exaggerated lightning bolts, centuries of graffiti. You realize Sisyphus isn't just punished, he's documenting it, turning monotony into art. If you're going to do something forever, he says, catching your glance, you might as well make it look intentional. The rock slips, groans, stops. He steadies it with one hand. You ever think Zeus does this to himself? He asks. Keeps the sky spinning, the storms running, just so he doesn't have to stop and think? You shrug. Probably. Then we're not that different, he says, and for a moment you see him not as condemned, but as companion, another being who can't quite rest because stillness feels too much like surrender. Historians still argue whether your name means wise or crafty, you say. Both, he replies without hesitation. He pushes again, every breath a negotiation between defiance and duty. You notice that when he finally nears the top, he slows, not from exhaustion, but hesitation. What if I make it one day, he muses. What happens then? The thought hangs in the air like a thundercloud that refuses to burst. The rock wobbles, then inevitably rolls back, rumbling past you with gentle finality. You both watch it go, descending into mist. There, he says. Now the universe feels balanced again. You help him dust off his hands. He gestures at the horizon where the slope folds into clouds that look almost soft enough to sleep on. You can go that way, he says. Next case is downhill. Tantalus, lovely fellow, always hungry. You hesitate. You ever talk to Zeus? He smirks. Only when he needs tips on motivation. Keep them busy, I told him. It's quieter that way. A low chuckle rolls through the air, maybe thunder, maybe approval. You feel the mountain's vibration settle back into its timeless heartbeat. Before you leave, you glance down the endless path. Sisyphus has already started again, the rock inching upward. The rhythm of his effort becomes hypnotic, a metronome for eternity. You realize why philosophers later loved this image. It's not despair, it's discipline. The calm that comes when you accept the task and find meaning inside the repetition. The wind stills. You can almost hear Zeus's sigh, carried from Olympus, another mortal lesson running smoothly. You close your eyes, feeling the texture of stone under your palm, cool and strangely comforting. Sisyphus whistles again, the sound fading into the fog. Maybe it's a tune about endurance. Maybe it's about the quiet rebellion of staying cheerful when the universe insists on monotony. Either way, it's oddly relaxing. You turn away, and the slope gradually levels out into a placid pool, glinting with silver light. The air grows damp, heavy with sweetness. Somewhere, fruit rustles in unseen trees, water laps at unseen ankles, and a voice sighs in frustration. You can already taste the irony of what's coming, a man who stands amid abundance, yet starves forever. Sisyphus calls faintly after you, voice distant but warm. If you see the rock, tell it I said hello. You smile, stepping forward into the shimmer, your footsteps dissolving into ripples. The mountain's groan fades, replaced by the sound of thirst. You've traded sweat for temptation, punishment by scarcity for punishment by almost. Zeus, it seems, has a sense of humor, after all. The stone beneath your feet softens into smooth sand, cool and faintly damp. The air thickens with the scent of ripe fruit, figs, pomegranates, peaches, so vivid you can taste sweetness just by breathing. You take a step forward, and your toes dip into a shallow, mirror-clear pool. It reflects the clouds above so perfectly that, for a sleepy second, you're not sure which way is up. Then a voice sighs, long and melodramatic, as though rehearsed for centuries. "Don't even try the grapes," it says. "They move." You blink, peering across the pool, and there he is, Tantalus, son of Zeus, part-time king, full-time tragic snack enthusiast. His hair gleams like polished bronze, but his expression is pure cafeteria despair. Around him, branches bend temptingly low, heavy with fruit that looks impossibly fresh. The moment he reaches, they sway just out of reach. The way a dream slips away when your alarm buzzes. He wades toward the nearest branch, the water swirling at his knees. The surface ripples, and suddenly the pool recedes like it's shy. Tantalus growls, splashing after it. "Every day," he mutters, "every day they let me hope for 3 seconds." You recognize the setup instantly. Punishment by proximity. Abundance turned into mirage. "So what'd you do?" you ask, already knowing Zeus wouldn't assign this level of irony for nothing. Tantalus shoots you a glare sharp enough to peel fruit. I borrowed from the divine pantry." You raise an eyebrow. "Borrowed?" he groans. "Fine. Stole. Shared ambrosia with mortals. Fed them the food of the gods. Zeus hated that. Said I blurred the line." The mainstream historical fact drifts up like a bubble. In ancient Greek ritual, eating what was meant for the gods was one of the gravest offenses. Offerings weren't just gifts. They were transactions. Mortals gave to maintain cosmic balance. Stealing from that balance meant rewriting the universe's accounting books in crayon. You tilt your head. "So this," you gesture at the pool, "is what? Portion control?" Tantalus snorts. "Call it divine dieting. Look but don't taste, sip but don't swallow." He reaches again, and again the branch jerks away with suspicious speed. Somewhere in Olympus you imagine Zeus sipping nectar and muttering, "That's for the time you brought me mortal stew." "Wait, you served him human stew?" you ask, remembering the darker version. Tantalus freezes mid-reach. grimaces. That's the rumor, he admits. Maybe I tested him once. Maybe I didn't. Historians still argue whether I actually did it or just thought about it. Either way, Zeus reacted like Yelp with a thunderbolt. You watch as the pool creeps back toward his ankles, daring him to try again. At least it's scenic, you offer. He smirks. Sure, if you like irony as a decorating scheme. The quirky tidbit here? Some ancient poet said the fruit wasn't ordinary at all. It changed flavor daily, cycling through the most tempting possibilities. One day figs, the next honey apples, then exotic varieties imported from dreams. Imagine being stuck at a buffet where the dishes hover just out of reach forever. Ever think Zeus does this because he's jealous? You ask gently. He gives mortals thunder, love, beauty, but draws the line at dessert. Tantalus chuckles bitterly. Maybe. Or maybe he's teaching restraint. Either way, I've been here so long, I've memorized the way the water moves when it pulls back. Watch. He steps forward, and sure enough, the pool shrinks in a swirl of blue-gray mist. He laughs dryly. Predictable as divine scheduling. You sink down on the sand beside the pool. The temperature here hovers between cool and warm, like twilight never ends. The wind smells faintly of salt and nectar. You could almost nap here, if not for the endless frustration humming through the air. Tantalus sits beside you for a moment, elbows on his knees. You know, mortals think Zeus punished me for greed, but maybe it was for curiosity. I wanted to taste the divine world, not just worship it. Maybe I got too close. You think of Prometheus's fire, of Sisyphus's climb. Each story's the same melody with new lyrics. Reach too high. Repeat forever. Maybe, you say softly. That's what gods do. They turn curiosity into chores. Tantalus smiles faintly. Then the trick is to turn the chore back into curiosity. He stands, eyes on the fruit again. Every day I wonder, will it stay? Will I catch it? That question keeps me awake and, oddly, alive. The branches rustle teasingly overhead. You swear you hear one whisper, "Not today." He sighs, leans forward, and the whole grove ripples away like a watercolor touched by rain. You can't tell if the gods designed it cruelly or beautifully, or both. A soft breeze ruffles the surface of the pool, creating rings of light that pulse like heartbeats. For a moment, you imagine each ripple is another mortal temptation, a text you shouldn't send, a promise you can't keep, a dream you almost grasp. Zeus, ever the cosmic teacher, specializes in these slow, ironic lessons. From far above, thunder murmurs like a chuckle. He'll keep reaching, you hear Zeus say faintly, his voice traveling along the wind. It's not punishment, it's practice. You lie back, half submerged in the shallows, eyes half closed. The water doesn't retreat from you, it accepts your stillness. Maybe that's the trick. Desire pauses when you stop chasing. The thought feels oddly modern, a touch of meditation hidden in myth. Tantalus mutters somewhere near your head, "If you see Zeus, tell him I'm fine, just thirsty." You grin, letting your fingers drift in the water. The pool glows faintly around them, light bending as if amused. Then slowly the glow spreads, coiling into mist again. You realize you're being carried forward, your body light, drifting along the current that connects one mythic crime scene to the next. In the distance, you hear machinery, something metallic spinning fast, accompanied by a rhythmic whoosh. The air warms, carrying a faint smell of smoke and ozone. It's less serene, more industrial, as though the next lesson comes with sparks. You wave a lazy farewell to Tantalus, who is already back to his chase, reaching for fruit that laughs quietly as it sways. You wonder if, after so long, he prefers the chase to the catch. The water around you begins to spin. A light breeze turns to a gust, and through the whirling mist you glimpse motion, something circular, burning, and occupied. Zeus's punishments, you realize, are escalating in creativity. The wheel turns faster, and you follow it, drawn into the orbit of another soul who mistook charm for cleverness. The mist twists into a blazing spiral, and you feel your stomach lurch like you've stepped onto an amusement park ride that forgot to stop spinning. Sparks dance in the air, each one a tiny flash of divine disapproval. The ground beneath you solidifies into a platform made of cloud glass, humming softly, and right in front of you whirls the strangest contraption you've seen in the underworld so far. A wheel, radiant and alive, spinning with lazy inevitability. Strapped to it is a man who still manages to look smug despite the whole eternal torment situation. "Careful," he calls as he whirls past upside down. "Zeus might mistake you for another guest." You blink, trying to focus as the wheel turns slower for a moment. "Ixion?" you ask. The man grins, hair singed at the edges. "In the charred flesh. Well, technically in rotation." He laughs, and the wheel picks up speed again, his words stretching into a Doppler whoosh. You've heard his story before. The first mortal invited to dine with the gods. The first to mistake divine hospitality for something else. Ixion, the original boundary tester, decided that seducing Hera, the queen of Olympus herself, would be a solid networking move. Zeus disagreed. When the wheel slows again, Ixion hangs upside down at eye level with you. "You have to admit," he says, "I aimed high." You can't help but snort. "Yeah, and now you're on the first cosmic Ferris wheel." He winks. Innovation comes at a price. The mainstream historical fact slides gently into the scene. In early Greek religion, guest right, xenia, was sacred, but so was divine hierarchy. Violating either was a serious breach of cosmic etiquette. Zeus Xenios, guardian of hospitality, punished anyone who abused it. Ixion, having enjoyed divine wine and then attempted to romance the host's wife, managed to break both rules in one night. Efficiency, if nothing else. Ixion's wheel turns again, crackling as lightning licks its edges. You notice that instead of metal, it's made of pure energy, pulsing with stormlight. Historians still argue, you murmur, whether your punishment symbolizes eternal guilt or perpetual lust. "Why choose?" Ixion calls, laughing. "Zeus loves multitasking." You can almost hear Zeus's dry voice somewhere above. "You wanted to spin her? Fine, spin forever." Divine sarcasm eternalized. The wheel slows enough for you to walk closer. Sparks jump off it like mischievous fireflies, stinging the air. Ixion's wrists are bound by glowing bands, but he doesn't seem in pain, more annoyed. Like someone stuck on hold with celestial customer service. "You ever get used to it?" you ask. "The spinning?" He shrugs, which is impressive for a man mid-rotation. Eventually, the world looks clearer when it keeps turning. Makes you appreciate the moments you're right side up. The quirky tidbit arrives with a chuckle. Some ancient vase paintings actually depict Ixion's wheel with gears and axles, suggesting that Greek artists imagined it as a primitive machine, possibly the first depiction of perpetual motion in mythology. Humanity's obsession with endless energy, you think, started right here with a man who confused chemistry with hubris. Ixion grins down at you as his wheel pauses. Want to hear the best part? Before Zeus caught me, he sent a test, created a cloud shaped like Hera, called her Nephele. I, didn't notice the difference. You raise an eyebrow. You flirted with a cloud? Enthusiastically, he admits. That's how centaurs were born. Turns out Zeus's sense of humor has consequences. You burst out laughing, and even he chuckles, the sound dissolving into static. So this, you gesture to his wheel, is what? Celestial irony? Exactly. Zeus wanted to prove a point. Mortals who spin lies get spun themselves. The thunder overhead deepens, like Zeus chuckling from a thundercloud recliner. Don't feel too sorry for him, says a voice you can't see. He asked for attention, now he has mine. Forever. You could swear the sky just rolled its eyes. Ixion groans good-naturedly. He drops in every century just to make sure I'm dizzy enough. You can't tell if he resents it or misses the company. The wheel starts turning faster again. A glowing blur of gold and smoke. You feel a little seasick watching it. The air hums with the smell of ozone and the faint sweetness of scorched nectar. Zeus could have just banished you, you point out. Where's the poetry in that? Ixion replies, voice muffled by rotation. A punishment needs style. You can't argue. The Greek gods never punished with simplicity. They turned moral lessons into theater, each scene dripping with metaphor. You start to realize that the myths are less about fear and more about choreography, gods dancing humans into moral shapes. The wheel slows, and Ixion faces you once more, sweat beading on his forehead. You've met Prometheus, he asks. You nod. Tell him I like his eagle better than this commute. A breeze sweeps past, rustling your clothes. The faint scent of pine and blood creeps in from the distance. Somewhere below, you can hear the growl of a wolf. Ixion notices your gaze turning toward the sound. Ah, he says softly, Lycaon's dinner party. You'll like that one. Very bitey. Lightning flashes once more, casting long shadows across his spinning silhouette. Before you go, he says, voice suddenly earnest, remember this, punishment isn't always pain. Sometimes it's motion, just enough to keep you from ever resting. The wheel spins faster, and soon he's a blur again, laughter and thunder merging into one dizzying hum. You watch, entranced, as his light becomes a halo against the dark clouds. Zeus's lessons often end this way, with beauty blooming out of absurdity. You step backward, feeling the platform dissolve underfoot. The world around you blurs into gray wind. The metallic tang fades, replaced by the earthy smell of forest loam. You hear leaves rustling, the snap of twigs, and the low, hungry growl of something not entirely human. The wind whispers the next name, Lycaon. You follow the sound, drawn toward the tree line where punishment has teeth, and the moon hangs like a silver judge. As you drift forward, the last thing you hear is Ixion's cheerful shout echoing from the spinning light. Tell him to save me a leg. The forest gathers you in like a velvet curtain, needles muffling your steps, branches sketching thin silver lines against a round, watchful moon. You feel the air cool against your cheeks. It smells of pine pitch and something iron sweet, like a story that got too real. Somewhere ahead, a fire flickers. Not the civilized hearth of Prometheus's gift, but a campfire with opinions, sparks spitting upward as if they'd rather file a complaint with Zeus's HR about what's about to be served. You edge past ferns beaded with dew and arrive at a clearing made of shadow and hush. In the middle, a long wooden table leans under the weight of a feast that glows like a painting. Roasted meats, glazed fruit, wine breathing in clay jugs. It looks generous. It feels wrong. Your stomach, wise in the ways of Olympus, declines to comment. Lycaon stands at the head of the table, tall and stern in the Arcadian way, with eyes that seem to catch and hold the moon. "Welcome, traveler," he says, voice steady. "A king must feed his guests." His smile doesn't reach his gaze. You've heard the brief. Lycaon, son of Pelasgus, proud of his wild mountains and stricter hospitality rules than even Zeus Xenios. But tonight, he's hosting someone special, a mysterious guest he suspects is a god traveling incognito. The kind of suspicion that leads not to reverence, but to a prank with teeth. You sit, not touching the plates. The wind stirs. The moon brightens like a referee leaning in. And then a stranger joins, hooded, quiet, with the sort of presence that straightens your spine without asking. You don't need a name tag. Zeus likes to audit hospitality in person. Lycaon glances sideways, something cunning passing across his face like a shadow over snow. He signals, and servants bring a covered dish to the table, heavy and solemn. The lid lifts. Even the fire stops crackling. You don't need to look closely to understand this is a test. An obscenity disguised as a course. Lycaon, so the stories say, served human flesh to see if the guest would notice. The moment stretches until it thins into silence. Then the stranger exhales, and the night inhales lightning. The table explodes into whiteness. The meat drops back into being was and never should have been. The moon seems to flinch. You don't hear thunder so much as feel a verdict. When the light resolves, the table is empty, the feast gone like a memory that refuses to be kept. Lycaon staggers, hands on the wood. He's panting, not from fear but from exposure, the kind of nakedness truth slaps onto a face when it arrives uninvited. The hooded guest raises his head. You glimpse the old sky in his eyes and the familiar exhaustion of a god who hates being forced to prove himself at dinner. Hospitality, Zeus says softly, is not a dare. Then, with a gesture that is both sentence and lesson, he blurs the king at the edges. Lycaon gasps, doubling over, fingers clawing at air that used to forgive him. His shoulders bow, spine reshaping beneath skin like a river carving its banks. Fur rises gray as cloud, his jaw lengthens, eyes going lunar bright. He hits the forest floor on 4 feet, breath steaming, a growl stitched from shame and instinct. The wolf lifts its head and meets your gaze, not a monster exactly, but a truth in motion. Treat a guest as prey, become the thing that hunts. He bolts into the pines, silence splintering behind him, and the clearing settles like a curtain falling at the end of a too honest play. Zeus lowers his hood, weary. Boundaries, he murmurs, are for keeping the wild in its proper place. And then he's gone, as if he never cast a shadow. You stand in the cool aftermath, hearing only owl wings and your own slow breathing. The mainstream historical fact pads in on quiet pause. On Mount Lycaon in Arcadia, the sanctuary of Zeus Lycaios, the wolf Zeus, was real, complete with an ash altar where offerings burned for ages. Archaeologists have uncovered an ancient athletic festival there, a mountain Olympics, and the ash heap's layers tell a story of long devotion. The place is older than most city myths, a ridge where the sky feels close enough to shake hands with. But here's the shadow under the fact. Rumors swirled for centuries about what happened on that mountaintop. Plato even mentions whispers that if a man tasted human flesh at the Lycaea festival, he'd become a wolf for 9 years. Pausanias, the travel writer of antiquity, repeats campfire tales about transformation and taboo. Historians still argue whether any human sacrifice occurred or whether it was all slander, misunderstanding, or rumor ballooned by rival cities and anxious imaginations. The ash mound yields mostly animal bones. The debate paces on, tail flicking, never fully at rest. You look down. In the soot where the feast had been, paw prints appear and vanish, like the forest is editing itself. The quirky tidbit trots into the clearing. Some say the epithet Lycaios might not mean wolf at all, but light from like, the first pale edge of dawn. So is Zeus Lycaios the wolf Zeus, or the Zeus of daybreak? Scholars have sparred over the etymology like territorial foxes. If he's the Zeus of light, then Lycaon's metamorphosis reads differently. Not just a punishment, but the sudden flood of illumination that forces a hidden appetite into its true shape. You sit on a stump that smells of resin and rain. Hospitality keeps weaving its thread through your night. Zeus's complaint box, Sisyphus's motivation seminar, Tantalus's buffet of almosts, Ixion's very bad date. Here, the rule is simplest. When a guest crosses your threshold, you treat them like a fragile miracle. The Greeks knew this. Host and stranger formed a compact under Zeus Xenios, stamped with thunder. To violate it, as Lycaon did, was to snap a bone in the social body. No wonder the cure felt feral. An owl calls once, low and polite. In the trees, leaves tick with the softest wind. You imagine Lycaon learning the forest by nose and ear, humbled to the earth he once ruled. Maybe he comes to understand hungers he'd ignored when knives were clean and plates were polished. Maybe he discovers a different kind of kingship, made of careful steps and quiet listening. You hope so. It would be like Zeus to fold a lesson inside the terra, to leave a door cracked even for a wolf. Remember our cafeteria despair? You whisper to yourself, thinking of Tantalus's fruit stand-up comedy. At least no one tried to serve the reviewers. A branch snaps somewhere in the dark, and you can almost hear Prometheus's dry voice. At least the eagle only eats what grows back. You offer the forest a small, awkward smile, the universal human apology for, "We've done worse." You brush ash from your palms and think of that sanctuary on the mountain, of runners circling the stadium while smoke rose from an altar, of spectators gossiping about rumors they'd never see proved. Myths grow like moss. Where the air is damp with awe, they thrive. The wolf, the light, the feast, everything softens into symbols under the moon's steady attention. A path opens between the pines, silvered with dew. It seems to agree that this lesson has landed. Before you leave, you kneel and set a simple offering on the stump. A bit of bread, a sip of water, hospitality inverted, from guest to God. The night approves with a tiny breeze that smells like clean rain. From far away, you hear wheels. No, not Ixion's, but the rattling of amphora lids and the whisper of linen in a place that smells of rosemary and crushed laurel. A clinic, a quiet room. The next case, where mercy complicated policy and Zeus updated the Thunderbolt manual. You rise, soft as fur, and follow the smell of smoke that isn't wild but careful, medicinal, healer's fire. As you step out of the trees, the forest's last gift is a hush so complete your thoughts slow down to match it. For a moment, you feel entirely seen by the night and entirely forgiven by it too. Then the moon tilts, politely sending you on your way, and you move toward lamplight, where a god of medicine waits at a crossroads with a cure that worked a little too well. The forest melts into lamplight, and the smell of pine shifts into something clean, olive oil, smoke, and faint myrrh. You blink, and you're standing inside a marble hall that hums softly, like a heart slowed almost to rest. Shelves line the walls, stacked with glass jars that pulse faintly from within, like someone caught fireflies and convinced them to stay for science. A low wind whispers through a row of hanging bronze tools, each chime tuned to a different frequency of prayer. A man stands at the far end, sleeves rolled to the elbow, eyes steady as still water. You know him by the serpent staff resting nearby. Asclepius, the healer who accidentally found the loophole between mortality and divinity. He doesn't look like a rebel. He looks like someone who apologizes when he steps on a leaf. His hands move calmly over a figure lying on the stone table. A mortal woman, asleep but breathing. A faint glow warms her chest, brighter, then steady. There, he murmurs, good as new. A voice, somewhere above, thunder quiet but unmistakable, mutters, that's the problem. You lean against a column, watching the way Asclepius moves, measured, reverent, almost sleepy in his precision. He wipes his hands and sighs. He's still watching me, isn't he? Always, you say. He smiles faintly, the kind of smile you'd trust with a secret. I didn't mean to cause trouble. Healing is supposed to honor the living, but when you love what you do, he trails off, looking toward the now breathing woman. Sometimes you forget where the line is. That line, of course, is death, the rule no mortal, no demigod was meant to cross. Asclepius didn't just mend bones or soothe fevers. He raised the dead. It was one resurrection too many before Zeus's lightning policy came into play. The mainstream historical fact glides through your thoughts like a patient note in a textbook. Ancient Greek sanctuaries of Asclepius, called Asclepia, were real healing centers. Visitors slept overnight in special chambers where priests interpreted their dreams for cures. Snakes, sacred to the god, slithered freely, symbols of renewal. Archaeologists have found inscriptions thanking Asclepius for healing everything from blindness to gout. Basically, Yelp reviews in marble. Asclepius gestures for you to follow him outside. The night air hums softly. Constellations seem brighter here. I learned medicine from Chiron, he says, voice barely above a whisper. And from Apollo himself. I only wanted to see how far compassion could go. He glances upward. Apparently too far. The quirky tidbit slips in with a wink. Some later poets claimed Asclepius discovered resurrection by observing one snake bringing herbs to revive another. That's why the rod of Asclepius bears a single serpent coiling upward. Not a threat, but a reminder of that lesson. Nature itself wants to heal, even when the gods impose limits. Thunder murmurs faintly, a celestial throat clear. Asclepius looks skyward. He's still mad, he says, though without bitterness. Zeus thinks I upset the balance. He's not wrong. If no one dies, who honors the gods? Who feels awe? He sits on a low stone bench, elbows on knees. But if you've ever held someone slipping away, you'd understand why I tried. You sit beside him, feeling the quiet tension of someone waiting for a verdict that's already been delivered. Historians still argue, you offer softly, whether your story symbolizes medicine's danger, how knowledge without restraint can challenge divine order. He nods slowly. Or maybe, he says, it's about mercy's cost. Lightning flashes on the horizon, brief but bright. When Zeus struck me, he says, I didn't feel pain, only surprise. Like watching a patient wake before you've even stitched the wound. He chuckles, half sad, half proud. At least I didn't get the boulder gig. You smile. Sisyphus says hello. He grins, shaking his head. That poor man, at least I got promoted, or so they tell me. Indeed, myth says Asclepius didn't stay dead. Zeus later placed him among the stars as the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. Some call it atonement, others celestial job security. The night deepens around you, the temples glow fading into calm twilight. A faint coiling sound echoes, perhaps one of the sacred snakes patrolling the columns. Their scales catch the light like living starlight. You feel the pulse of their symbolism, renewal, the eternal cycle of shedding and becoming. Maybe that's the real cure, the endless ability to start again. Asclepius stands, brushing dust from his hands. Zeus doesn't hate healing, he says. He hates imbalance. Immortality was his department. He walks toward a basin and rinses his hands. I should have asked permission first. You raise an eyebrow. Do gods have paperwork for this stuff? He smirks. You've seen his complaint box. You both laugh quietly, thunder answering like a distant drum roll. The healer glances toward the sleeping woman, now peacefully breathing. He says I blurred the line between mortal and divine. Maybe. But if compassion blurs boundaries, then I'll keep blurring them. You hear the faintest rumble again, Zeus's sigh, or maybe reluctant admiration. He's the kind of god who punishes, then secretly promotes. The stars seem to shimmer brighter for a heartbeat, and you realize Asclepius is fading, folding back into the constellations that keep his legend awake. If you ever need a dream cured, he says, sleep beneath my sign. But don't overdo the ambrosia. You promise. The world tilts slightly, and the marble under your feet becomes dust. The smell of antiseptic fades into something rowdier, smoke, incense, and the brassy clang of celebration. Somewhere ahead you hear laughter, too loud and too proud, trumpets, a crowd shouting praise, and above it all, the unmistakable rumble of Zeus clearing his throat. The next myth spins like a carnival in your mind, a man staging his own thunderstorm, impersonating the boss. You look back once to where the healer's temple once glowed. The basin glimmers, the snakes coiled peacefully. In the distance, lightning flickers, soft and harmless. Maybe Zeus is practicing restraint tonight. Then the laughter pulls you forward. The air grows hotter, the ground rougher. You step into the bright glow of torches and see a city painted in fake lightning, gold foil, mirrors, and arrogance. Someone is pretending to be Zeus, and the real one is, you suspect, not amused. Heat shimmers off the cobblestones as you step into a city square that looks like a festival collided with a thunderstorm. Everywhere you turn, people are craning their necks toward the sky, hands shielding their eyes from bursts of artificial lightning. A man in a gold-embroidered robe stands on a balcony, arms raised, basking in the applause of his own sound effects. The clouds above are suspiciously fake, smoke-filled, backlit, trembling with man-made thunder. Citizens of Elis, he booms, voice cracking like cheap fireworks. Behold, I am Zeus, bringer of storms, master of the skies. You squint. His crown looks tin. A whisper brushes your ear. That's Salmoneus, says someone beside you, an old man with the faint smell of olives and patience. Used to be a king. Now he's about to be a cautionary tale. Indeed, this whole pageant is the ancient version of a YouTuber gone too far. Thunder replicas, golden chariots, and thunderbolts on a budget. He rides in circles through the city, dragging bronze cauldrons behind his horses so they clang and echo like storm drums. Sparks shoot from torches mounted to his cart, raining glitter over the crowd. The people cheer, half awed, half nervous. Nobody likes being in the splash zone of blasphemy. The air thickens. Real clouds gather above, dark and layered like bruises. "Ah," murmurs the old man, "here comes the review committee." The mainstream historical fact slips into place. In Greek myth, Salmoneus ruled in Elis and decided to imitate Zeus, demanding worship as the thunder god. He even built a bridge to mimic lightning strikes with bronze plates and sparks. The real Zeus, unimpressed by the imitation, sent genuine thunderbolts and burned both king and city. Historians still argue whether this myth reflects early temple rituals gone wrong or is simply a political parable about kings overreaching divine boundaries. You watch Salmoneus preen under his fake lightning. "Behold my power," he shouts, pointing a torch skyward. The gods must love irony because the sky answers, just not on his schedule. A real flash cracks open the clouds, bright as pure judgment. The crowd drops to their knees. The old man sighs. There's always one who thinks costume parties don't need permission slips. Salmoneus's torch sputters. The horses rear, panicking. The bronze cauldrons clatter like symbols of doom. Thunder rolls again, this time bone deep. The next bolt doesn't pretend. It descends, soundless at first, then splits the world with white fire. When your vision clears, the balcony is empty. The robe, the crown, the props, gone. The only thing left is the faint smell of ozone and the silence that follows a performance canceled mid-act. The quirky tidbit hums quietly. Archaeologists discovered that in ancient festivals honoring Zeus, priests sometimes rolled heavy bronze wheels across temple floors to mimic thunder. Controlled theater meant to honor, not impersonate, the god. Salmoneus's act might have been satire of that practice gone extreme, turning pious noise into parody. The air settles, still humming faintly. You can almost hear Zeus's dry remark echoing through the dark. Accept no substitutes. You walk through the ruins of applause, the crowd dispersing in whispers. It's strange how quickly reverence flips to fear. Statues of Zeus now seem to watch you with that same patient warning. Don't mistake spectacle for substance. You think of modern echoes, fake gurus, plastic halos, influencers selling divinity by the click. The pattern hasn't changed. Only the filters have. A few survivors gather near a fallen column. One mutters, "He wanted thunder. He got it." The others nod, their faces lit by the faint reflection of distant lightning, soft and real. You find yourself smiling, not out of cruelty, but recognition. Zeus doesn't punish out of jealousy. He's allergic to bad theater. His justice runs on sincerity, not special effects. Historians still argue, you murmur, whether Zeus's wrath here was moral or aesthetic. The wind, smelling faintly of smoke and irony, replies with a half-hearted grumble. Maybe both. You wander down a narrow street where the storm left scorched marks like fingerprints. At the end of it, a temple door hangs ajar, and within glows the faint blue of real electricity, the kind that doesn't need applause. The torches inside flicker, bending their flames toward something bright. You step in and find a mural newly scorched onto the wall, a chariot, a bolt, and a single phrase in ancient script that translates roughly to "Respect the brand." You laugh quietly, the sound echoing oddly in the emptiness. Salmoneus got what every imposter eventually gets: exposure, eternal, glowing, slightly embarrassing exposure. As you leave, rain begins to fall. Not heavy, just a polite drizzle to wash the stage clean. You tilt your face up, feeling the warmth of real thunder overhead, soft like a heartbeat. Maybe Zeus is cooling off after the show. Then the world shifts again. The air turns humid, the ground soft beneath your feet. The smell of fresh grass mingles with something sweeter, milk maybe, or sorrow. You hear a low, uneasy moo. You open your eyes to see fields stretching endlessly, wildflowers brushing your knees. A lone white heifer grazes nearby, eyes wide and shimmering like pearls. Around her neck jingles a small bell that sounds almost like laughter trapped in metal. A gadfly buzzes past your ear, persistent as a bad idea. You sigh. You already know this story. Another mortal tangled in divine affairs, another punishment that looks suspiciously like rebranding. Io, the girl turned cow. The price of Zeus's jealousy, or more accurately, Hera's creative vengeance. The rain stops. Sunlight spills over the meadow, deceptive in its calm. Somewhere in the clouds, Hera clears her throat, and Zeus braces for the argument he deserves, but will pretend to win. And you, poor traveler, are once again in the front row for the next celestial domestic drama. The meadow breathes like something half awake, grass rippling in soft sighs as a white heifer lifts her head toward you. Her eyes are enormous, calm, and too human to ignore. They shimmer with that same trapped-in-a-dream look you've seen before, on statues, on victims of divine curiosity. The bell at her throat gives a shy chime as she takes a step closer. "Io?" you whisper, and she blinks once in recognition, a tear sliding down her muzzle like dew that forgot its cue. The air is honey thick, but it carries tension. You can feel Hera somewhere above the clouds, arms folded, watching this pastoral theater unfold. Zeus, ever the improviser, is nearby too, disguised again, probably behind the next tree, pretending to be a cloud or a shepherd. The smell of ozone trails him wherever he hides. Io flicks her tail as if to say, "Don't start." You can sense the whole backstory humming under her hide. A priestess once, devoted to Hera herself, until Zeus decided admiration looked like destiny. Hera, sharp-eyed as any HR manager in Olympus, noticed the suspicious scheduling overlaps. When the boss shows up unannounced, Zeus panics, classic pattern. Instead of apologies, he produces camouflage. With a gesture, he turns Io into a gleaming heifer. Subtle. Nothing says innocent friendship like sudden bovine transformation. The mainstream historical fact wanders in gently. In Argos, where Io's legend began, there really was a temple dedicated to Hera, and priestesses there were sometimes called heifers as a sacred title. Archaeologists even found cow-shaped figurines in the ruins. Maybe the myth grew from that. Symbolic devotion turned into literal metamorphosis by the rumor mill of time. Zeus's plan might have worked if Hera weren't the universe's best detective. She appears, no thunder, no flare, just that look that makes every sky god forget his lines. "What a lovely cow," she says sweetly. "May I keep her?" And Zeus, cornered by etiquette, nods. Because once Hera uses her polite voice, it's already over. Now Io belongs to Hera, guarded by Argus Panoptes, the 100-eyed sentinel. You glance up. Sure enough, the mountain slopes shimmer with eyes blinking in unison, each gleam a restless watch. Argus never sleeps. When half his eyes rest, the others wake. You wonder how he blinks without losing count. Io lowers her head, chewing nervously on a clover patch. The gadfly arrives, a tiny ambassador of Hera's ongoing irritation. It buzzes in slow circles before landing on her flank. Io twitches, moves softly, and begins to move. Run, you whisper. She already is. You follow her across continents of dream geography, from Argos's golden plains to the dust of Egypt, through reeds and riverbanks, over seas renamed for her wandering. Her hooves leave small sparks, proof that even punishment can map the world. Along the way, you catch glimpses of sympathetic onlookers, Hermes playing lullabies to put Argus to sleep, Zeus hiding apologies inside clouds shaped like hearts, each attempt at mercy tangled deeper in the myth's web. Historians still argue, you murmur, as Io pauses by the Nile, whether your story represents migration, moon cycles, or divine jealousy made literal. She looks back, eyes soft, ancient, as if saying all of them, probably. The quirky tidbit floats by like the gadfly itself. In some versions, Hera didn't send the insect out of cruelty, but out of compassion, to drive Io toward places where she'd eventually find her human form again. An irritating mercy, but mercy nonetheless. At the river's edge, Io dips her muzzle into cool water. The reflection ripples. For a moment, you see the ghost of her human face shimmer beneath. She closes her eyes, exhausted. The gadfly hovers, hesitates, and finally drifts away, bored of eternity. Maybe even divine pests need breaks. You kneel beside her. You made it, you whisper. The reeds sway like an audience exhaling. Somewhere far away, Zeus finally gathers enough courage to face Hera again. The conversation will last centuries, as all their conversations do, but at least one mortal will be left in peace. The night leans in. The constellations feel different here, closer, more forgiving. You notice the faint outline of a heifer among the stars, Io's afterimage stretched across the sky. It glows softly near the arc of the Milky Way, her long journey fossilized in light. She stands slowly, no longer trembling. In the myth, this is the moment Zeus restores her, turning flesh back to flesh, breath back to speech. You watch the shimmer roll over her, fur dissolving into skin, hooves into hands. She gasps, touching her face like she's unsure it's really hers. The bell falls away, its chime the tiniest echo of freedom. You help her steady herself. "What will you do now?" you ask. She smiles, voice hoarse but human. "Sleep," she says, "and then build temples so people remember wandering can end." The air grows soft again, the field wrapping around her like a blanket. Hera's gaze eases, maybe proud, maybe pitying. Zeus exhales somewhere far above. You feel the temperature rise by a degree, storm tension releasing. You lie back in the grass, watching clouds reshape themselves into calmer stories. A cricket chirps, the world's tiniest applause. Io curls near you, already half asleep. The smell of clover and distant thunder fills your nose. You think about all the forms Zeus's punishments take: chains, wheels, thirst, wolves, cows. All of them circle the same axis, the fragile balance between desire and decorum. Every lesson he hands down is wrapped in irony, delivered with the timing of a tired comedian who knows his audience won't change, but performs anyway. The stars blur a little. You blink, realizing the grass beneath you has turned to stone, slick and cold. A drip echoes somewhere below, steady as a metronome. The meadow dissolves into corridors of shadow, and you hear the soft splash of water in endless repetition. The air tastes of limestone and regret. You've arrived where guilt never empties. The hallway of the Danaids, daughters with buckets that will never fill. Their punishment hums ahead like a lullaby made of echoes. You rise, brushing imaginary grass from your knees, and step into the subterranean light. The last sound you hear from above is Eo's bell, faint and final, turning from chime to heartbeat before fading into sleep. You descend into the earth's cool breath, where the air hums with the rhythm of dripping water and whispered labor. The walls glow faintly blue, like moonlight trapped in stone. You follow the sound of splashing, steady, measured, endless. It's hypnotic at first, almost comforting until you realize it never stops. The corridor opens into a vast underground chamber, a cathedral of repetition. 50 women stand in a long, dim line, white dresses torn and damp, hair clinging to their shoulders. Each holds a clay jar, and each jar leaks, tiny cracks spidering down the sides, so the water pours out as fast as they can pour it in. The Danaids, daughters of Danaus. You know the myth before anyone speaks. They killed their husbands, the sons of Aegyptus, on their wedding night. 49 obeyed their father's order. 1 disobeyed, sparing her groom. That single act of mercy gave the gods just enough hope to design a punishment laced with possibility instead of fire. The 50 sisters were condemned to fill a bottomless cistern with leaking jars. The one who spared her husband, she was forgiven, but not freed. A woman near the front looks up as you approach. Her face is streaked with water, her arms shimmering with a sheen of perpetual effort. "Careful," she says softly. "If you stand here long enough, you start counting drops instead of heartbeats. You step closer. The ground underfoot is slick, patterned by the delicate mosaics of centuries of footsteps. The pool in the center reflects the faint, trembling glow from above. The women move in rhythm, dip, lift, pour, sigh. The cycle never breaks. It's like watching time breathe in a loop. You wonder aloud, does the water ever rise? The woman smiles, a small tired curve of the mouth. Only when someone listens. The mainstream historical fact ripples through your mind. In ancient Argos, the Danaids weren't just villains. They were founders. The city claimed descent from them, and the Danaids' fountain, the Danaan, was a real site where women of Argos drew ceremonial water. The myth, then, might not be only about guilt. It might be about labor, legacy, and purification, the endless work of maintaining balance between the living and the dead. A droplet falls from the ceiling, landing in your palm. It feels warmer than you expect, almost alive. You let it slide between your fingers, imagining how many thousands of such drops have been carried, poured, lost. Historians still argue, you murmur, whether your punishment means futility or cleansing. The woman nods. Maybe both. We empty the water so it stays pure. If it filled, it would stagnate. We keep it moving. It's an oddly serene interpretation for eternal labor, but maybe, after centuries, even punishment becomes ritual. A soft laugh rises from farther down the line. A young woman with dark curls and eyes that refuse defeat. The gods call it punishment, she says, but it's exercise and gossip hour for us. She dips her jar, holds it up, and watches the steady leak with amused resignation. At least it's not snakes. The quirky tidbit sloshes in. Some later poets imagined the Danaids' leaking jars not as vessels, but as metaphors for souls, each sister's heart unable to hold love because of the whole guilt left behind. Psychologists have since borrowed the image, a Danaid complex describing people who pour effort into impossible tasks. Ancient myth meet modern burnout. You sit by the edge of the cistern, legs dangling. The light from the water paints moving constellations on the ceiling. Each glimmer feels like a name whispered, a life remembered. The air smells faintly of minerals and something floral, perhaps from the river Lethe nearby, the mythic water of forgetting. You can't tell if it's mercy or mockery that the two rivers share a border. One of the sisters pauses beside you, refilling her jar. "You don't look condemned," she says. "Tourist." "Something like that," you reply. "Then take this." She hands you a small shard from a broken jar. "Souvenir, proof you don't have to carry the whole thing." You hold it carefully. It's smooth, warm to the touch, like it's been held by thousands of hands. You feel its history, a microcosm of exhaustion turned into endurance. Above, thunder mutters distantly. Zeus's presence, even here, hums faintly like a generator running in another room. You wonder if he checks in on this corner of Tartarus often, or if he's long since delegated it to an assistant deity. Maybe punishment, like paperwork, becomes routine. The woman smiles faintly, seeing your thought. He doesn't watch. He listens. Every drop that falls is an apology. He keeps count. That idea lands softly, heavier than thunder. You listen too. Drip, pour, drip, pour. A rhythm ancient enough to predate guilt itself. Another sister laughs from the shadows. "You think we're miserable? Some of us prefer this. There's comfort in knowing exactly what tomorrow will be." Her tone isn't bitter. It's lullaby slow, full of strange peace. No surprises, no gods knocking with new instructions. You close your eyes and the sounds blur together until they resemble rain on a rooftop. The Danaid's labor becomes the world's heartbeat, slow and even. The first woman leans close. "The trick," she whispers, "is to stop believing the jars are supposed to hold. We just keep the rhythm. That's enough." You open your eyes, and the cistern glows brighter. Maybe she's right. Maybe eternity doesn't have to be torment if you stop expecting resolution. The chamber begins to fade around you, replaced by a faint smell of smoke and hearth. The rhythm of dripping shifts into the crackle of firewood. You realize the next stop isn't about punishment itself, but about the rules that shape it, oaths, guests, quiet taboos that hold the cosmos together. Zeus Xenios, patron of boundaries, is waiting to explain why manners matter even in myth. As you rise, you glance back one last time. The Danaids work on, serene and synchronized, their reflections rippling like silver leaves in moving water. The echo follows you upward, a steady lullaby in liquid time. Drip, pour, drip, pour. Maybe somewhere the water does rise after all. You climb from the echoing corridors into light again, soft golden. The kind that smells faintly of hearth smoke and warm bread. The space around you reshapes into the quiet interior of a house. Simple, sun-washed walls, a table set for two, a jug of wine breathing on the sill. A breeze lifts the linen curtain. You realize you're inside an ancient Greek home, one of those the poets never bothered to describe because its perfection is in its ordinariness. Someone coughs politely behind you. You turn to see a man in a traveler's cloak, dusty, sandals frayed. His eyes glow with the faintest electric thread. You know that look. Zeus Xenios, the guardian of hospitality, god of thresholds and guests, has come disguised again, walking the mortal roads like a secret shopper in the supermarket of kindness. He gives you a conspiratorial smile. Don't worry, tonight I'm auditing, not punishing. You follow him as he steps outside into a narrow lane of sun and shade. The world smells of olives, honey, and afternoon heat. Chickens gossip in the dust. Most people forget, he says, that I'm not only the god of thunder, I keep the peace between doors." He gestures to a nearby courtyard where a man and woman kneel beside an old stranger, washing his feet with water from a clay bowl. Their hands tremble, but their smiles are gentle. The stranger's pack rests nearby, half open, revealing nothing divine, just the wear of travel. "They don't know who I am," Zeus murmurs, "but they remember the rule. Every guest could be a god, every god could be testing." The mainstream historical fact walks in quietly, sandals soft on dust. Greek xenia, the sacred bond between host and guest, wasn't just custom. It was law, backed by Zeus himself. Every traveler's safety depended on it. Even wars could pause when hospitality was in play. Archaeologists have found guest gift tokens called tesserae hospitalis, small stone pieces split between host and visitor, so that generations later their descendants could recognize one another as kin by hospitality. Historians still argue, you say, whether xenia was religion or diplomacy. Zeus smiles. Both. When people feed one another, they forget they were ever enemies. You step forward, watching the couple serve the stranger bread dipped in oil, a handful of dates. Their house is small, the food humble, but the gesture fills the air like perfume. The woman glances your way and laughs softly, as though she senses you're part of the same story. A shout erupts from the next courtyard over. You look to see a man turning away a beggar, shoving him into the street. The beggar's bowl clatters, scattering coins. The air trembles, thunder grumbles behind a cloudless sky. Zeus exhales through his nose. "That," he says, "is how punishments begin." He doesn't hurl a bolt, not yet. Instead, he steps forward and picks up the fallen bowl, returning it to the beggar with a nod. The man's house creaks as if the foundations suddenly remember how fragile they are. A single tile slips from the roof and breaks. No more, no less. "Warning shot," Zeus mutters. The quirky tidbit joins with a chuckle. In some rural Greek villages well into modern times, travelers could still claim Zeus Xenios' right, knock on a door and ask for bread and water in the god's name. Refusing wasn't merely rude, it invited bad air, thought to bring storms or illness. Folk superstition or lingering divine policy? Hard to say. You walk again through the lane. Zeus pauses to run his fingers over a doorframe where someone has carved a small symbol, two intersecting spirals. "Protection mark," he says, "a promise that whoever enters will be fed before questioned." He traces it with faint lightning that glows and fades. You ask, "Do you ever tire of checking?" He considers. "Mortals change costumes every age, but the story stays the same. I test, they forget, I remind." His voice softens. "You know what I envy? The mortal ability to forgive one another without thunder. You think of Lycaon's dinner table, of how far hospitality can fall. And when they don't?" you ask. He shrugs, looking up at the slow gathering clouds. Then the sky teaches manners. He gestures for you to follow toward a distant hill where columns rise in graceful ruin. Come see where their promises end up. The scene wavers, and suddenly you're standing inside a vast office again, but this one's older, stranger. The air hums with the sound of quills scratching. Shelves tower around you filled with clay tablets, scrolls, and parchment. Every thunderbolt, every sentence, every redemption, filed, stamped, cross-referenced. "This," Zeus says, "is Tartarus's logistics wing." He grins at your expression. You thought eternal punishment managed itself? A clerk made of shadow and wind scurries past, carrying a ledger thicker than time. Somewhere, Sisyphus's boulder squeaks faintly on its track. The smell of ink and ozone mingles, weirdly pleasant. But before you move deeper into this bureaucratic abyss, Zeus pauses at the threshold. Remember, he says, hospitality isn't just food or shelter. It's the grace of remembering someone else's storm and giving them a place to dry. He looks suddenly tired, like an ancient traveler himself. Even I need that sometimes. You almost reach out to offer him a seat, but he's already gone, folded into the flicker of lightning that traces along the file cabinets. The glow lingers, outlining his words like afterimage on a camera flash. You step through the open door into the next rhythm of eternity, the clack of record-keeping, the paperwork of justice. The smell of wet stone fades, replaced by the scent of old papyrus and candle smoke. Ahead, faint voices echo, judges debating, scribes sorting, chains being inventoried. You realize you've arrived at the administrative heart of mythic consequence, where eternity files itself into neat rows. You take a breath, half amused, half reverent. Zeus's punishments, it seems, are only half the story. The other half is the system that keeps them spinning. The ceiling lowers, the corridors stretched like ribs. A sign written in looping Greek letters reads, Tartarus, records and operations, staff only. You grin. Guess I'm staff tonight. The door sighs open, inviting you in. The door seals shut behind you with a sound like thunder muffled in velvet. The air here feels still, like the pause between lightning and its echo. Flickering lanterns line the hallway, each flame hovering just above its wick, held in suspension by some quiet enchantment. You walk forward, the marble beneath your sandals faintly vibrating with the heartbeat of eternity. Tartarus, it seems, isn't all fire and agony, it's mostly administration. Rows of desks stretch into infinity. Figures sit behind them, judges, scribes, auditors, and an alarming number of filing spirits who look like overworked librarians made of smoke. The rhythm is hypnotic, quills scratching, parchment rolling, the faint metallic whisper of chains being measured, weighed, and catalogued. You could mistake it for an ordinary office, if not for the occasional roar of a myth echoing through the corridors. A sign above the first doorway reads, Eternal Sentencing Department, for repetition-based penalties only. You smirk. Sisyphus must have a whole drawer to himself. A tall figure approaches, robes black as obsidian, eyes gleaming with that tired precision only seen in lifelong civil servants. Welcome to Tartarus Logistics, he says. I'm Minos. Yes, that Minos. He gestures toward a desk. King once, judge now. Promotions are funny things. You nod respectfully. Minos waves a papyrus scroll under your nose. Zeus sends his regards, he says. Said you're here on the educational tour. His tone suggests quotation marks you can almost hear. He leads you past shelves labeled Thunderbolt Allocation Records, Hubris Index, and Pending Appeals. Eternity plus Every scroll hums faintly, alive with divine electricity. You brush one accidentally, and a whisper curls into your ear. Prometheus, liver cycle. From before 1129, 122, complete. You step back quickly. Automated reporting, Minos explains. Helps Zeus sleep at night. The mainstream historical fact hums like the quills themselves. In ancient Greek belief, the underworld's administration was run by 3 judges, Minos, Rhadamanthus, and Aeacus. They didn't torture, they assessed. Souls confessed their deeds, and the judges sent them to the appropriate afterlife zone, Elysium for heroes, The asphodel meadows for the ordinary, Tartarus for the ambitious. In early versions, even these judges weren't villains, just civil servants doing cosmic paperwork. A second judge, Rhadamanthus, glides over, robes whispering like sea foam. His eyes glow faintly blue. "You're interrupting," he tells Minos mildly. "Sisyphus's quarterly review is due." You blink. "Quarterly?" Rhadamanthus sighs. "Performance metrics. Zeus likes updates, keeps morale consistent." You can't help but laugh. Does Sisyphus ever improve? Technically, Rhadamanthus says, he's maintaining an A+ in perseverance. You continue down the corridor, your footsteps echoing in rhythm with the endless scratch of styluses. Every so often, you pass a side door labeled with a name: Tantalus, Hunger Department, Ixion, Rotation Maintenance, Danaids, Hydrology Sector. The bureaucratic precision is both absurd and comforting. Even damnation, it seems, benefits from good record-keeping. You pass a massive marble desk where Iacchus, the third judge, sorts scrolls into 3 piles: redeemable, hopeless, and pending review. You lean closer to see the handwriting. Each scroll bears a faint shimmer, soul's memories, frozen into ink. Iacchus notices your curiosity. "We keep everything balanced," he says. "Even mercy needs structure." The quirky tidbit shuffles up in your memory. In later Orphic traditions, Iacchus was imagined as the underworld's gatekeeper, literally managing the keys to Tartarus. Greek priests even carried little bronze keys as symbols of access to secret mysteries, part administrative badge, part spiritual metaphor. You wonder if he's the original model for every overworked gatekeeper who insists on proper forms. Minos returns, holding another scroll. "This," he says proudly, "is Zeus's punishment ledger. Every case reviewed, every sentence cross-checked." He unrolls it. Lightning flickers through the script. You recognize names: Prometheus, Sisyphus, Tantalus, Ixion, Lycaon, Asclepius. Each entry glows faintly different, like heartbeats on paper. Historians still argue, you say, whether these punishments reflect moral justice or mythic drama. Minos shrugs. Both. Justice makes order. Drama makes believers. A thunderclap punctuates the sentiment from somewhere above, as if Zeus signed the statement himself. You continue deeper into the labyrinth. The walls now pulse faintly, not like stone, but like the inside of a living thing. Chains hum in distant hallways, echoing in time with an invisible heartbeat. You pass a department labeled Appeals and Loopholes, its door cracked open. Inside, a few hopeful souls plead their cases to minor deities with quills sharper than daggers. Some are denied politely. Some are told to try reincarnation. A faint laugh drifts down the corridor. Soft, familiar, the kind of laugh that carries mischief and music. You feel a tug, a change in pressure. "That's your next stop," Minos says knowingly. "The appeals wing. You'll like it. It's where things occasionally get interesting." He pauses before you go. "Tell Zeus we're still waiting for new filing cabinets. The last storm warped half the drawers. You promise to pass it along." As you move away, a clerk passes by carrying a tray of glowing seals, each marked "Approved for Parole." You glance at one name: Heracles, Subclause, 4B, Community Service. Another glows faintly: Orpheus, Conditional Return, Revoked. Even here, rules flex, outcomes shift. Tartarus, it seems, isn't static. It's self-correcting. The air grows lighter as you follow the laughter down the hall. The sound resolves into the strum of a lyre, soft and defiant. A new corridor opens. columns carved with vines, torches burning blue. Somewhere ahead, songs are rewriting sentences, and the boundaries between punishment and pardon are being negotiated in melody. Behind you, the murmur of clerks fades, replaced by harmony. The bureaucracy of eternity gives way to something older and more dangerous: persuasion. You take a deep breath, feeling music tug at your bones. Even Zeus's thunder pauses to listen when this particular note plays. You're about to enter the department where mercy has a rhythm and myth occasionally forgives itself. The hum of bureaucracy fades into something far more fluid, a melody that seems to wind through stone itself. You follow it down a corridor lit by torches that flicker in rhythm with the song, their flames swaying like listeners at an ancient concert. The walls here are warmer, their carvings alive with shifting images, chains uncoiling, rivers reversing, flowers blooming from marble. You've reached the department of loopholes and appeals, where the impossible gets politely reconsidered. A man sits on a bench made of gold-veined obsidian, plucking a lyre whose strings glow faintly blue. His eyes are hollowed by memory, but still bright with focus. Orpheus. You recognize him instantly, not for his fame, but for that posture of listening even while he plays, as though half his attention is forever reaching backward toward a lost heartbeat. He looks up, nods once in greeting, and keeps playing. Each note unwinds through the air like silk thread. Shadows lean closer to hear. Even the clerks, those smoky functionaries of eternity, pause their quills to listen. You sit beside him. The bench hums faintly under the music. "Still appealing the same case?" you ask gently. He smiles without humor. "They keep denying it on technicalities. I'm not bitter, just rehearsing." His fingers trace the strings again, slower now. The melody you hear is one the world hasn't forgotten, the one that nearly persuaded the underworld itself to bend its rules. The mainstream historical fact glides in like a whisper. In Greek thought, Orpheus's descent to Hades symbolized the power of art to move even the immovable. Ancient mystery religions, the Orphic cults, taught that music and purity of soul could free one from the endless cycle of rebirth. Archaeologists have found thin gold tablets buried with followers, inscribed with tiny Orphic hymns and travel instructions for the soul, which rivers to avoid, which words to say when facing the judges of death. Even paperwork, it seems, has a musical version. Historians still argue, you tell him, whether you looked back because you doubted Eurydice or because you doubted yourself. He plucks a dissonant chord. Maybe both. Love is louder than logic until it isn't. He leans forward, squinting at a distant desk where a minor deity flips through scrolls lazily. That's Dyke, the clerk of appeals. Sweet woman, but strict on procedure. You follow his gaze. The goddess of justice looks half bored, half radiant. Her scales tip back and forth with each argument delivered to her. Beside her stands Hermes, serving as messenger, interpreter, and occasional stand-up comic. A queue of souls waits before her, each with petitions. A weary titan holds a parchment that reads, "Request for reduced liver regeneration frequency." Dyke stamps it, "Denied," without looking up. Next, a mortal poet asks for early parole due to inspirational value. "Temporarily approved," she sighs, "but only if someone remembers your verses." You can't help but smile. "So mercy depends on memory?" you whisper. Orpheus nods. "And memory depends on song." The quirky tidbit chimes in like a bell. One Orphic hymn described the lyre as a bridge between the mortal heartbeat and the pulse of the cosmos. Later philosophers borrowed that metaphor for the structure of music theory, the idea that harmony itself was mathematical sympathy, proof that the universe could be persuaded through pattern. Essentially, Orpheus invented the idea of vibe-based theology. Zeus doesn't appear in person here, but you can feel his signature in the structure, every appeal routed through lightning-fast logic, every mercy weighed against cosmic precedent. On the wall, a plaque glows faintly. Justice is not denial, it's tempo control. You stand, drawn toward Dyke's desk. And if someone truly deserves release, you ask. She looks up, eyes bright as sunrise. Then the file disappears, she says simply. Mercy erases ink faster than thunder. You think of Prometheus, still chained but humming, of Sisyphus whistling on his slope, of Tantalus learning to enjoy the chase, of the Danaids who've turned futility into ritual. Maybe mercy doesn't mean freedom. Maybe it means finding rhythm inside repetition. Behind you, Orpheus's melody shifts key, major to minor, sorrow to serenity. The sound softens the very air, and you feel an invisible lock click open somewhere in the dark. Did you just... You start. He shrugs. Music still works on small locks. A faint laugh rolls through the corridor like a breeze scented with ozone. Zeus's voice, distant but amused, says, "Careful, musician. I like your improvisation, but don't try it on the main gates." Orpheus grins. "Wouldn't dream of it." Lightning flickers far above, echoing down the corridors. You sense movement, a figure emerging from shadow. It's Heracles, broad-shouldered, easy grin, carrying a broken chain over one arm like a souvenir. "Evening," he says casually. "Zeus said I could clock out early, just dropping this off." He tosses the chain onto a pile marked Completed Tasks. Dyke stamps something on her tablet. 12 labors, 1 aftercare assignment. Approved. Heracles winks at you. "See? Loopholes exist if you work overtime." You laugh, and even Dyke smiles faintly. The corridor feels lighter now. You can sense air rising through unseen vents, like Tartarus itself is exhaling. The song fades, but the resonance remains, shimmering in your ribs. For the first time, the afterworld feels less like a prison and more like a classroom, a place where every punishment doubles as philosophy. Orpheus closes his lyre case. "They'll send you upstairs soon," he says. "That's where the air thins and thunder naps. The final floor." "Final?" He nods. "You'll see. It's quiet there. Even Zeus gets contemplative sometimes." You start walking toward the dim glow at the end of the corridor. Behind you, Heracles is already teasing Dyke about paperwork. Orpheus tuning his lyre again, the judges in the distance updating their ledgers with sighs and stamps. The air grows cooler, thinner. Clouds gather under your feet like carpet. You're rising back toward Olympus, toward a horizon brushed with gold and rain. You think you can already hear it, the soft rumble of thunder half asleep, the heartbeat of a sky god ready to unspool his final thoughts. The punishments have been catalogued. The appeals have been sung. Now only reflection remains. You climb through the light, leaving the sound of paperwork and music behind, stepping into a stillness that tastes like rain on marble. You rise through the last cloud like surfacing from a long dream, eyes blinking against the glow. The air up here is thinner, sweeter, touched with that electric hush right after lightning, when the sky smells briefly like possibility. Mount Olympus stretches beneath your feet again, its peaks now quiet, its halls bathed in a late golden haze. The storms are sleeping. The punishments, those intricate lessons disguised as cruelty, hum softly far below, like machinery purring under a calm surface. You walk a familiar path of marble threaded with cracks that glimmer faintly from centuries of thunder. The clouds roll lazily along the horizon, pink-edged and harmless now, like lions turned into house cats. Somewhere you can hear the faint whistle of Sisyphus from his slope, the soft splash of the Danaid's jars, the echo of Prometheus's laugh carried by the wind. Every story, every myth, every punishment has become background music to the mountain's serenity. Zeus waits at the summit, not on his grand throne this time, but sitting on a simple stone bench, shoulders slumped, hair tangled by the wind. He looks older, or maybe just quieter. Lightning rests beside him like a staff retired from duty. He gestures for you to join him. "Long tour," he says. His voice sounds almost human when he's not trying to impress anyone. "You've seen most of the back-end work. Any thoughts?" You settle beside him. The view is enormous. Oceans glittering, constellations yawning into evening. "You punish," you say, "but it feels less like vengeance and more like maintenance." He nods. "That's all it is. The world's a leaky roof. I patch it with thunder, and it leaks again. Mortals learn, then forget, then learn again. Repetition is the only language they trust." The mainstream historical fact drifts through your mind like a passing breeze. Ancient Greeks believed Zeus Ombrius, the rainbringer, didn't just punish but nourished. His storms both destroyed and renewed. Farmers prayed to him for rain, even as sailors cursed him for waves. Balance was his true domain. Zeus smiles faintly, as though he's overheard your thought. "They call me just cruel, fatherly, fickle, all true, depending on which side of the storm you're standing." You glance upward. The clouds have arranged themselves into slow spirals, like halos laid flat. Historians still argue, you say, whether you're the moral compass of the cosmos or just the bureaucracy keeping it running. He chuckles. "Same thing some days." He leans back, watching a hawk glide under the amber clouds. "Truth is, I'm tired of punishing. The stories, they run themselves now. Mortals don't need thunder to learn anymore. They've built their own." You imagine all the modern Prometheuses playing with fire, electric grids, data, artificial minds. "Do you ever regret them?" you ask. Zeus shakes his head. "No, even gods need reminders that we can be surprised." The quirky tidbit arrives like a whisper of wind. Some ancient writers, especially philosophers of the later Stoic school, claimed Zeus didn't punish individuals at all. The myths were metaphors for the natural order correcting itself. Lightning striking the tall tree wasn't wrath. It was physics reminding arrogance of balance. You watch his gaze as he speaks and realize maybe that's what this god has always been, a personification of cause and effect that just happens to have good dramatic timing. "Mortals tell my stories before they sleep," he murmurs, "to keep the night polite." You smile. It works. They still whisper your name when it rains. Zeus looks almost bashful. "Old habits. I never meant to frighten them into goodness. I just wanted the world to have boundaries, so they'd know where kindness begins." The air stills. You feel it, the vast, aching calm that comes after too many centuries of sound. For the first time, you hear Olympus breathe. The mountain exhales wind through its slopes, the kind that could rock you to sleep. Zeus closes his eyes, thunder murmuring faintly beneath his words. The punishments, they're not prisons, they're lullabies. Each one repeats until someone listens. You let the silence stretch, long and low, until it feels like a heartbeat. Then you ask, and do they ever stop? He smiles, not at you, but at the horizon. Only when mortals stop mistaking the story for the punishment. Every myth ends the moment someone learns what it's really saying. Below, the clouds shimmer like mirrors, each one holding a flicker of the scenes you've passed. Prometheus's mountain, Sisyphus's slope, Tantalus's pool, Ixion's wheel, Lycaon's forest, Asclepius's temple, Salmoneus's ruined city, Io's meadow, the Danaid's well, Tartarus's office, Orpheus's song, all of them circling softly like dreams orbiting a sleeping mind. Zeus stretches, bones crackling like distant thunder. You've walked through eternity tonight. Tell me, mortal dreamer, are you sleepy yet? You laugh under your breath. More than I thought possible. Good, he says. That's the point. The mind needs story, like the sky needs rain. Without it, everything dries. He lifts one hand and a tiny bolt flickers between his fingers, not the violent kind, but gentle, like static when you touch someone you love. He flicks it skyward, and the stars brighten in response. There, he says softly, let them sparkle a little longer. You lie back on the marble, the world a dome of slow-turning constellations above you. The mountain hums a lullaby of wind through stone. Zeus stands, stretching into silhouette, and then fades into the clouds, leaving only the faint scent of rain and an afterglow of electricity in the air. You close your eyes. Somewhere, Prometheus hums a work song, Sisyphus whistles between pushes, and Tantalus laughs at another missed apple. All of it sounds less like torment now and more like rhythm, eternity's heartbeat, steady, measured, kind. The mountain quiets, the air thickens, softer now, weightless as dusk. The thunder's last murmur dissolves into the sigh of a slow breeze. Each breath you take feels warmer, fuller, as if you've inhaled centuries and exhaled forgiveness. The sky dims from gold to silver to deep velvet blue. Stars pulse faintly, each one a whisper from a story that no longer hurts. You let the images drift past, chains unfastening, rocks resting, water pooling calm. The gods have gone to sleep. The myths have tucked themselves back into the folds of the night. Even the punishment machinery hums slower, gears easing into stillness. It's the sound of the world catching its breath. The marble beneath you cools. The smell of ozone fades into something clean, like rain that's fallen on open fields. You realize the lessons tonight weren't about wrath at all, but about balance. The way the universe straightens its posture after every tilt. Zeus's punishments were never cruelty, they were gravity in mythic clothing. Your heartbeat sinks with the hush around you. The thunder that once barked commands now whispers lullabies. Clouds curl into gentle shapes above, and the first stars begin to blink slower, dimmer, steady. Somewhere in that softness, Zeus murmurs one last word, not of judgment, but of release. Rest. You obey. The myths settle inside you like stones in clear water, their reflections smooth and harmless now. You feel yourself sink deeper, lighter, safe. The mountain hums once more, lower, slower, and the sound carries you towards sleep, where even gods take a moment to dream of peace.